Hi, HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today, we have a very special guest on the show. We're joined by Eileen McDargh, who is an international expert on the strategy of resiliency in the workplace and CEO and Chief Energy Officer at the Resilience Group. And she's also recently ranked #1 on the Global Gurus Top 30 list. Eileen, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm anxious for this conversation.
Fantastic. Well, first and foremost, congratulations on your recent #1 rank on the Global Gurus Top 30.
Surprise, a lovely surprise.
Well, it's also how I came across you today. So it's definitely done its job, and I'm really happy that I came across it because I would never have come across your work. And I'm really, really excited to have this conversation because all of the areas that you touch upon impact our listeners, the HR executives that listen to this show. So I'm really excited for it. So before we jump in, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
I have authored 7 books. The first book that I authored in 1984 was called Work for a Living and Still Be Free to Live. It is now out of print. But at that time, what, as far as we can tell, I was the first person to actually address this notion of work-life integration and authentic work.
Definitely ahead of your time.
Yeah, because that topic has just come full circle. And this notion of resiliency has fascinated me. I don't think I could put my finger on it until actually probably when 9/11 hit in the United States. What I was watching is what was happening to myself, to my fellow citizens, for how we responded to what was the largest event and tragedy to hit us as a nation. And it struck me that resiliency was part of the very core. And so the book that came out of that was called Your Resilient Spirit, Staying Right Side Up in a World That's Upside Down. So it's a fascinating journey, and I just, there's so much to say about this, there's so much to do about this, and I believe I am my own case study.
Very interesting.
As I watch myself, I think we always teach what we need to learn, and I believe that when we can meet each other, whether it's as we're doing now, that when we can come with a place of openness, vulnerability, and authenticity, then we can begin to have the kind of conversations that are both meaningful as well as productive.
And just for a second, just to go back a bit further, where did this passion for this, when you started out your career, where did this passion come from to, have you always been a self-starter, just an entrepreneur, or was there a point in your career where you're like, I believe in this so much, I'm going to go out and pursue this?
The fascination with words, both the written word and the spoken word, has always been my heart. It's been my bread and butter. Long ago and far away, when I was in school, I was on the national debate team, the extemporaneous team. In fact, I thought I wanted to be an attorney because I loved cross-examination.
Yeah, I think you'd be a great attorney, by the way, just from the conversations we've had over the last half an hour. Yeah.
So now this will tell you how long ago it was that I thought, well, why be a lawyer? Because you'll just get married and you won't work. Well, I'll double that.
Yeah.
So my solution was to marry an attorney.
Oh, right. So you got some of it at least.
But I have always been within the field of communication. I taught everything from preschool to adults in a rural community at the Florida-Georgia border. And then I was with the National Healthcare Management Company looking at corporate communications. I was with a PR firm handling corporate communications for their multinational clients. And I realized that this whole notion of communications, which is where this wonderful identity with Global Gurus comes, is at the heart of everything we do. Mm-hmm. And what I also realized in this transition when I left the public relations field was that if I wrote another press release, I was going to throw up. Yeah. It did not feed my heart. And what I realized was that the relationships that needed to be developed were not with the press. It wasn't getting the CEO's picture on the cover of the Wall Street Journal or the Newsweek or Time or whatever. It was really with each other. And it is that as I watched what happens and how I could assist individuals and organizations with how they came together, what I actually then ended up realizing is that all of communication is about an energy management connection. how we realized, when I call myself CEO, Chief Energy Officer, that resiliency is the result of the connections that we make that are either good or not good. And from that, we either get energy or we're depleted. And what is energy at its very basic, but the ability to do work?
And I'm so happy I asked that question now, because I love understanding where people, the circumstances and what took place to get you where you are. You found your why during that journey to where we are now, right?
That, I love that. That's one of the key points or skills in being resilient. It's what I call alignment. It's when you are lined up with that which is most meaningful to you. That's what will allow you to keep on keeping on. And Viktor Frankl said it so eloquently in Man's Search for Meaning, is that you can survive in any what if you know what your why is. And why doesn't have to be this, I'm going to save the world. It can be it can be that I'm going to raise the greatest kids in the world. I'm going to provide them with amazing things.
That's my new why, by the way. My wife and I just had a baby.
Oh,
Yeah, a few
congratulations.
months ago. So my why completely switched to exactly what you just said. So my why before was around Chris, my own goals, my own, growth, etc. Now it's completely switched to creating a better life for my family and Robin. Whenever I have a bad day and I'm struggling, I go home, I see that little smile on her face, and that's all of the energy and everything I need right there. I'm rejuvenated through that, seeing my wife and my Robin happy.
Well, you said something very important there too, is that the why of our lives can change as the context of our life changes. And context is everything. It's everything. So when I speak on this whole work-life integration, I say, what's the phase of your life? Because depending on the phase of your life, you're going to require different energy for
Yep.
different things. I cared for my mother in the last 6 years of her life, who had dementia. She had a stroke that took out her entire left side. Let me tell you, my energy and how I managed that was very different than what it is now that mom has passed. And I love what you said there, Chris, is that as you have entered this new life, this adorable little girl, now how you structure your life and what gives you energy, that's what fills it back up. We got to refill that gas tank.
Yeah.
That gas tank called energy. What refills that is the time that you get to spend with this child.
And it's impacted everything. It's impacted my company as a startup and how I structure my day. I wasn't thinking about that when we was planning to have a child. But then when the baby come, I realized that there's so much it impacts outside of just, I was worried about how do I take care of a baby. But what I didn't realize is the impact it would have on my work relationship, the time in the office. I could no longer work crazy hours like I used to. Traveling all over the world was now no longer an option to all of our workshops because I need to support my wife. So there's a million things that shifted the
So
experience.
you also brought up another important point, that when you said, now that you've had this child, you have to make alterations in how it is that you work. That's a critical issue for HR managers. Because if we think that everybody comes into work and they put their baby, their Alzheimer's mom, their whatever in a desk drawer and closes it off, we're kidding ourselves.
Yes,
So
definitely.
part of it is, what are the practices that we allow people to bring full lives with them? And that comes with conversation. That comes with, how do we create flexible policies? Because if you understand who I am as a person and where I am, let me tell you, I'll give you 300%.
Yeah.
I just have to alter it a little.
We've made huge strides in that area, I think, over the last few years now. And most companies now have a flexible policy, a work policy, but there are still many out there that don't. And it's like, unless I see you, you're not working, which is always drives me crazy. If anything, when you give people that trust and autonomy, they work harder because they believe it. They're more engaged. They think that, Chris believes in me, and I'm going to show him that he should believe in me, and here's the results for that. But just want to go back for a second. How do you define resiliency?
So let me tell you what it is not. It is not bouncing back. The traditional dictionary definition is basically to take an object, it's a tensile strength, to bend it when the pressure is off, it moves the original position. So if I were to ask a group, I said, tell me what resiliency means, and they'll say bounce back. That does not work for the human system. It's fine if you're a piece of steel. It's fine if you're a willow tree that can bend. There's no such thing as going back, which is why I call it radical resiliency. And it means to grow through challenge or opportunity so that you end up wiser and better on the other side. No growth, no resiliency. And we grow in ways which can be wisdom. Maybe it is physical strength. But notice I also said growing through challenge or opportunity. Because oftentimes we think resiliency is when, oh my God, it's a crisis. All right, big resilience.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could have a phenomenal opportunity presented to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to require a lot of energy on your part to make that journey through. So it's all about, to me, resiliency is about energy management.
Yeah, a lot of people have a negative association to it. I actually have a very positive association because I know that all the times that I've had to be resilient and is to achieve something great, or I had to go through those tough times and those challenges to improve personally and develop. So now I relate that's just part of the journey for me. I know that I'm going to have to experience that to achieve my goals, and that's just so I'm excited about it almost. Because if I'm not feeling that, and I'm not, I know that I'm not challenging myself, if that makes sense, and I know that I'm not growing both personally and also the organization.
Growth can happen in many ways. I'm fascinated. There is some research and conversation about PTSG, and which is post-traumatic stress growth instead of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And how that event, whatever is that event, whatever pushed that, how is it that you can grow through this? And there was, I wish I could, it was called, wait a minute, I'll remember it. This gentleman who created, I'll call it a bar, but it doesn't serve alcohol. And it was a place for military when they come back to come to talk to each other, to have guest lecturers, to play hand and poker, whatever they did. But when they could come together, they began to talk about their experiences in a way. And he created that so that what they were seeing was what at face value looks really horrible, that when I'm with my colleagues, I realize there are some benefits that I can take out of that. There is some conversation about post-traumatic stress growth.
One of the things that we want to talk to you about as well, which is burnout in organizations are record levels, aren't they? And it's something we're hearing a lot. Could you share your experience on that and what you're hearing from the companies that you're working with?
In preparation for this, I just wanted to pull out some stats. In North America, I'm going to read this because I want this to be accurate. The cost of stress and burnout to North American companies is estimated to range between 120 and 300 billion dollars. In the UK, in November 18th, in the Telegraph, they reported that over 50% of the work-related illness was stress-induced and mental anxiety.
I'm not surprised.
It's across the board. I mean, I could look at stats for Australia. I could look at, so one of the questions is, what is it that we are doing to ourselves that is crafting this feeling? Burnout was a word that was coined by Dr. Herbert Freudenberger, who said basically it is excessively striving to reach some unrealistic expectation imposed upon by yourself or society. So you're going to look at it two ways. What is it that I'm saying to myself that says, oh my God, I have to work 48 hours in one day, because if I don't, well, I'm not a good employee, or I could lose my job, or so how realistic is that? And then as an organization, what is it that we say as an organization that is posing unrealistic expectations on our employees? And what's interesting, Chris, is in this fall, I was with the conference board in Boston, and that's a large collection of HR managers. And I was on a closing panel to talk about resiliency. And one of the things I challenged the HR managers to do is I said, you must speak truth to power.
Yeah, it's very important.
And the truth to power is that we can have senior level people up here, whether it's the VP, the president, the CIO, the CTO, whatever you want to call them, the EIEIO, whatever it is, who can make some pronouncements about, okay, this is what you're supposed to do over here, but has no idea what is it going to take to do that, and what are the stresses that are going to go on that employee. And I said, part of HR's role is to put your ear to the ground and say, when you said that, let me tell you what that's doing. And one of the examples, now I don't know whether they're doing it, whether they changed this or not, but one of our American airline carriers, aircraft carriers, made a pronouncement that said basically that if a flight has to cancel for whatever reason, whether it's mechanical, whatever it is, you cannot put a passenger on the next flight unless it is on our airline. Now you want to think about this for a minute. You've flown, you're all over the world. Let's say that you have an engagement and you have to be in New Delhi, and the flight is canceled, and let's pretend that you were on, let's pretend you were on United Airlines to New Delhi. Well, United doesn't have a flight going to United until the next 2 days. If the pronouncement came down that you have to wait, imagine how angry you would be, the person that's sitting there on the other side of that counter saying, I'm sorry, sir, I can't put you on Air New Zealand to go to New Delhi, even though it leaves, within the next 6 hours, because we now have a new ruling. That's why I think HR really is the ombudsman between the workforce and some of the things that are done up here. And one of the examples I talk about, Chris, is that we need to listen to the orange baton. And I want you to imagine that I am holding 2 orange sticks in my hand, and I'm making a gesture, which is saying, move forward, move forward. Where am I, Chris, when I'm doing this?
In the airport.
Exactly. I'm on the ground.
Yeah.
I'm men or women bringing in the planes.
Mm-hmm.
The reason they are there on the ground is what I call, how do you listen to the orange batons, is that the pilots and co-pilots of the planes that you and I fly have got to put the front wheel of that plane on something called the J line. And it's like the letter J that's there on the tarmac. The problem is the pilots and the co-pilots sit so high up, they can't see where the J line is. They depend upon those orange batons to say, okay, stop. In our work, we all have orange batons who can be closer to what, because I'm so far removed, I don't know what that's like.
Yeah, we make decisions and we don't understand the consequences of what it takes to actually achieve that, and the stresses, etc., that goes into it. How do you describe a resilient organizations, or what kind of characteristics do resilient organizations possess? What does that look like?
And it could be different for different organizations. What I would say, number one, I probably would look at what their turnover rate is. Are they keeping employees that they think are really good and solid, and are they getting the results that they want? So I think turnover could be part of it. I think the other thing that would say, are they a resilient organization, would be to ask, how are you growing in the development areas, your employees? So I have a wonderful colleague, Beverly Kay, who's written a book called Love Them, Don't Lose Them.
Great
and the
title.
other is Love It, Don't Leave It. Well, in Love Them, Don't Lose It, a resilient organization asks people, what is it that we can do to help you develop your strength? And it's not what are you good at, but what is it that really interests you? Because I'll stay with an organization that is interesting. Because, for example, when I talked about my former life, I'm good at writing. I am good at doing press releases. I don't want to do press releases. I'm not.
I share that so much. Well, again, that's why I left my last company. People are tired of hearing about this on the podcast, but I was really good at sales. I was a really good sales director, but I wasn't I wanted to do other things. I was interested in learning and exploring. And because my company didn't give me the opportunity to do that, I left the business. I really wanted to do that. So it's so important that you ask that question and not just assume because someone's good at something that they want to stick to it.
Well, that's it. And then our next question is that whatever was that company you worked with, were they a resilient organization? Were they growing through challenge or opportunity organizationally? So were they on a growth mode? Now, growth doesn't mean that you have to, climb to the top of the mountain, but it is this ability to maintain, a steady bottom line, that you can do whatever you need. And by the way, it's also for nonprofits. It's not just for for-profit organizations. Because I think sometimes in profit organizations, we can become so focused on shareholder return, which is short-term thinking.
Yep.
Instead of how do we grow through, so I have a legacy with this organization so that the organization can survive, which makes me think of, we all know organizations that in their mental makeup organizationally are not paying attention to the disruption around them. And because they don't pay attention to the disruption, they're making choices to stay the course, and the course has changed.
Well, I know you also talk about resilient in so many different contexts, not just the workplace as well. So we just kind of spoke about that. But I was wondering, when you think about resilient leaders as well, what does what kind of characteristics or soft skilled, hard skills do resilient leaders that you've worked with have?
There are 4, and I don't care whether and by the way, everybody's a leader. You don't lead yourself, you don't lead anybody else. So that's the first thing, is that you've got to look at yourself. Dee Hock, who was the founder of Visa, said that, you must first lead yourself, your character, your values, your aspirations. Then you worry about leading other people. So a resilient leader first says, what is it that I value? And by the way, just because you have a leadership title does not mean you're a leader.
Yeah, we all know that. We've all had bosses like that.
Yeah. They have no, and unfortunately we're seeing that a great deal across public arenas that are not real leaders. So a resilient leader is someone who in their energy management is able to create connections that allow them to connect. How do I connect with my brain? What am I thinking? Is it allowing me to see multiple ways of solving problems? Is it allowing me to get out of the past so I can move forward? Is it getting rid of the negative self-talk? So how is it that I do this? Is it asking the orange batons? What is it that you see that I don't see? So what are the connections I make with my brain? And is it giving me energy or depleting energy? The connections with my heart, And there's in the word heart is the word ear. And what I think of connecting with your heart is, am I listening closely? Listening first to myself. So like when you and I get into overwhelm, we're not listening. Because if you were to stop soon enough, you would say, This is nuts, Chris, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And then how well do I listen to other people who can give me another way of saying something? So adaptability, connecting with your head and your heart, and then with your hands. What do you do? What are you doing? It's one thing to think, it's another thing to do. And as the doing, are you doing things that are really meaningful? Are you getting involved in work that is not yours to do? Stop micromanaging the people over there. Help them grow. People want to have autonomy, mastery, and meaning. So how do you help them become masterful and let them do the job that they need to do? And what is it that you need to do? And then I also think resilient leaders have a sense of humor. How do you connect with laughter?
That's important.
And that's the short. Victor Borges said it's the shortest distance between two people. If I can get people to laugh, I just created a wonderful energy field. I have a colleague who looks at high performance humor, and we want to be with people who look like they are enjoying what they do. That there is a level of play. I don't care how serious it is. There is a level of play. Right now, we see some people in leadership positions who are the most joyless, negative. Why would you ever even want to be with that person? It was like, ugh. And then the last piece is the one that I mentioned earlier, is alignment. A resilient leader said, I'm doing work that for this context of my life is meaningful to me. And it is making a contribution to something greater than me.
You work with so many incredible organizations I've seen, major brands, both major global brands, as also one-on-one. What are some of the common mistakes that you see people make?
I think sometimes is that waiting too late to address some issues. If I just close my eyes, it's going to go away.
Having those uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah. Johnson, I've got one organization right now. It is incredibly dysfunctional. And actually, there's nothing I can do for them, because the person who is at the top says, quote, I don't like conflict. It's not conflict to hold someone accountable for performance. If you don't hold them accountable for performance and continue to reward them greatly,
Yeah.
What message is it sending to the rest of the organization?
Before I forget, could you talk about the Resiliency GPS?
Oh.
I came across this on your website. I was like, oh, very interesting. Could you talk about that and also the questions that are linked to that as well?
Your Resiliency GPS, the GPS stands for Growth Potential Strategy. And that's the last book that I wrote, was Your Resiliency GPS, which you can find on Amazon. And so what I actually did was take those 4 skills of adaptability, agility, laughability, and alignment. And in each one of those, I pose a series of questions. So if you think about a GPS, it's a guide. Number one, you can't use a GPS if you don't know where you are and if you don't know where you want to go.
It's already the biggest lesson there. It's right there. Like,
Right here.
right there.
Where do you find yourself now? How would you describe this position where you are now? And where is it that you think you want to go? Now, it might not be the North Pole. Maybe all you want to do is go to the corner drugstore, for one thing. But unless I can tell those two things, then I'm kind of running around in circles. And so the growth potential strategy, and actually I invite people to write the answers to what they find. Where is it? What's the context of your life? Where are you now? Where is it that you think you want to go? And what are the things that you need to do or not do that will help you get to whatever is this point here? And then along the way, the questions related to agility. So what's the actions? So it's one thing, where do I want to go? What are the actions that I want to take? Am I having fun in the process? Because if this is horrible, terrible, and I'm never going to smile again. I set the wrong quadrant. That's not where I really need to go. And then, of course, the alignment is constantly saying, what's my North Star? What is it that fills me that it's bigger than I am? And so I try to, as much as possible, continually update a resource page on my website where that book is listed, saying, oh, here's a great book that I just found. Here's something else that you could use. So we're trying to constantly help people along that journey because more and more is being written about it.
What advice would you give to the HR leaders specifically that listen to the show who are really in the center of their organizations that kind of manage all of these areas really and different stakeholders and different functions? What advice would you give to them on where they can start? Because I think that's one of the key things when you hear these incredible, conversations that you've shared with us today is where do I start? What are some small wins that I can get straight away to?
I love that idea of small wins. That I think if we're trying to do something, we need to celebrate the small wins.
Yeah, definitely.
I've always said an inch is a cinch, a mile takes a mile.
That's good. I'm going to steal that one. That's good.
Quote me on that. I came out of the shower a number of years ago.
Did you? Is that yours? Is that an original, Eileen McDargh? Oh, nice.
A mile takes a while. Personally, for HR leaders, what is the thing that you're working on and how do you make it? How do you celebrate incremental progress? I think the other piece of advice would be, are you willing to be vulnerable? Where is it that, I don't have all the answers to that. I mean, this world is so complex. When I hang up from you, Chris, I'm going to be online with a tech person because we're having all kinds of problems with email. My husband keeps saying, why can't you fix it? This is not what I know. I need to have advice. I don't know how to fix this. So I think, celebrate your own small wins, be vulnerable. And I'm really serious about speaking truth to power. I think that the closer HR executives hear what is going on within the organization and can ferret that up. And one of the questions is, if you're not listened to, then why are you in that organization? Because you're going to end up feeling disempowered and that you're just going through the motions. And so I think that's a really critical thing for HR people to do.
Well, Eileen, I'd love to keep talking to you forever about this. I think we could do a 3-hour show. We've got to do another one. And for everyone listening, Eileen, where can they learn more about yourself? And also, what's the best way for our listeners to get in contact with you if they wish to, speak to you directly, get you in for a workshop, some coaching? What's the best way to find out more about you?
Okay. So first off, obviously my website, which immediately at the top, it says contact information. I'm located in California. And no matter where we are, eventually I get, my office manages that. So you can either go to Eileen McDargh and you will have my name spelled out.com or the resiliency.group.com. That's probably the best way. You can also find me on LinkedIn and you can connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message on LinkedIn. I do have a Twitter feed, but I don't do a whole ton of stuff with that. My direct line in California is 949-496-8640, 949-496-8640. If you leave a voicemail message, no matter where I am, I will get it as an email message that I can listen to.
Fantastic.
And then the mail is Eileen at eileenmcdargh.com.
Fantastic. Well, to make things easier for everyone listening, as always, guys, everything that Eileen mentioned will be linked in the description for you. So wherever you're listening to this, whether it's iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, click the link description below. You'll have the links to everything that was just mentioned then. So to make it easier for you. But apart from that, Eileen, thank you so much for taking the time out to join us on the show. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you, and I'm sure our listeners feel the same way. And I wish you all the best until we next speak.
Let's talk again. I have more ideas for you.